I found the envelope 3 weeks after we buried my mother. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, and I was sitting on the floor of her bedroom closet, sorting through shoeboxes filled with old photographs and receipts she'd saved for reasons I'd never understand. The house smelled like her lavender sachets and that particular mustiness that comes from keeping windows closed too long. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. It was one of those ordinary moments that changes everything. My mother, Patricia Walsh, had died at 73 after a brief illness. When I say brief, I mean she went from her usual self to gone in 6 weeks. Pancreatic cancer doesn't negotiate. We'd had just enough time to say the important things, but not enough time to say everything. I thought I knew everything about her anyway, 52 years as her daughter, and I believed I'd mapped every corner of her life. I was wrong. The envelope was tucked inside a brown leather handbag she'd stopped using years ago, pushed to the back corner of the closet behind winter coats she'd never wear again. I almost missed it. I was about to donate the whole bag to Goodwill when I felt something stiff inside the lining. The envelope was vanilla, unmarked, sealed with tape that had yellowed with age. Inside were bank statements. Not from her regular checking account at the local credit union where she'd banked for 40 years. These were from a private bank in the city, statements spanning nearly 3 decades, for an account I'd never heard of, an account with my mother's name, and a balance that made my hand shake. $217,000. I sat there on that closet floor, staring at the numbers, while my entire understanding of my mother's life began to crack and shift like ice breaking up on a river in spring. My mother had worked as a school secretary for 35 years. She'd raised me alone after my father died when I was 6. We'd lived in the same modest 3-bedroom house my whole life. She drove 10-year-old cars and clipped coupons religiously. When I wanted to go to art school, she told me we couldn't afford it, and I'd gone to state college instead, taking out loans for what her salary couldn't cover. She'd worn the same winter coat for 15 years, and she'd had over $200,000 hidden away that entire time. I read through the statements with growing disbelief. The account had been opened in March of 1995, when I was 22 and living in my first apartment after college. The initial deposit had been $5,000. After that, deposits came regularly, every month, sometimes twice a month. The amounts varied, $300 here, $500 there, occasionally $1,000. Small enough not to be missed if you weren't looking, but they added up. Over 30 years, they added up to an impossible sum. There were no withdrawals except for one, 10 years ago, for $30,000. The notation read, tuition payment. My mother had never mentioned helping anyone with tuition. She'd certainly never offered to help me with mine. I looked through the rest of the envelope. There was a single business card for someone named Gerald Chen at the private bank. And there was a letter, handwritten on my mother's stationery, sealed in a smaller envelope with my name on it in her careful cursive. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open it. "My dearest Megan," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I imagine you have questions. I'm sorry I never found the courage to tell you this while I was alive. I was afraid of losing you, afraid of your judgment, afraid of appending the life we built together. But you deserve the truth, even if I'm not brave enough to give it to you in person." The letter went on for 3 pages, front and back, and by the time I finished reading it, I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. My mother had another child. A son, born when she was 19, 2 years before she met my father. She'd given him up for adoption because she'd been unmarried and alone and terrified. Her parents, devout Catholics who never spoke of shame but lived it in their silence, had sent her away to a home for unwed mothers and told everyone she was visiting an aunt who was ill. After the birth, she'd come home and they'd never spoken of it again. Then, 30 years ago, he'd found her. His name was Daniel. The adoption had been semi-open, and when he turned 21, he'd gotten access to his birth records. He'd tracked her down and written her a letter. They'd met for coffee. He didn't want to disrupt her life, he told her. He just wanted to know where he came from. He had parents who loved him, a good life, but he'd always wondered. They'd stayed in touch. Secret coffee dates, phone calls when I was at work, a relationship built in the margins of her life. He'd gone to medical school, become a pediatrician. The $30,000 withdrawal had been to help him when his own mother, his adoptive mother, had needed expensive cancer treatment, and his family was stretched thin. And my mother, who told me we couldn't afford art school, had given him $30,000. The regular deposits into that account, she explained in the letter, were her way of building something for him. Something she could leave him because she'd given him away once and couldn't bear to leave him with nothing a second time. She'd wanted me to know after she was gone. She'd left instructions with her lawyer to give me the account information, along with Daniel's contact information. She hoped I'd find it in my heart to share the money with him, to meet him, to know my brother. I sat in that closet until the light faded and the room grew dark, holding that letter and trying to reconcile this story with the mother I thought I'd known. The mother who'd raised me alone after my father died of a heart attack when I was 6, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and never missed a school play, who'd been careful with money, not because she had to be, but because she was saving for a son I'd never heard of, who'd watched me take out student loans while she had hundreds of thousands of dollars hidden away. I felt betrayed, furious, heartbroken. How do you grieve someone you thought you knew when you discover you didn't know them at all? I called my husband, Richard, and told him I was going to be late. Then I sat there in the dark, in my dead mother's closet, and tried to understand. The next morning, I called the lawyer handling my mother's estate. His name was Thomas Brennan, and he'd known my mother for 20 years. When I told him about the account, he sighed like he'd been waiting for this call. "She asked me to give you an envelope," he said, after the estate was settled. "I have Daniel's contact information, if you're ready for it." "Did you know?" I asked. "About him?" "Yes," he said quietly. "She told me about 5 years ago when she was updating her will. She wanted to make sure everything was handled properly." "And you didn't think I should know?" "It wasn't my secret to tell Megan. She was my client. I advised her to talk to you, many times. She always said she would when the time was right. I think she was waiting for a moment that never came. I wanted to be angry at him, but he was right. It wasn't his secret." After we hung up, I sat in my mother's kitchen, drinking coffee from her favorite mug, looking at the contact information Thomas had emailed me. Daniel Walsh. He'd kept her last name as his middle name, I noticed. He lived 2 hours away, in the same city where my mother had banked all those years. I wasn't ready to call him. I needed time to process, time to be angry, time to grieve not just the mother I'd lost, but the one I'd dud I had. But I kept thinking about that $30,000, about my mother who'd lived so carefully, giving that much money to someone I'd never heard of. What kind of relationship had they had? Had she loved him? Had she thought about him every day for all those years before he found her, wondering what had become of the baby she'd given away? Had she wished I was him instead? That thought arrived like a punch. I sat there in her kitchen and let myself imagine it. My mother, young and pregnant and afraid, giving away her baby. Then years later, having me with my father, trying to build a normal life. and that my father dying, leaving her alone with a daughter who reminded her every day of everything she'd lost. Had she resented me? Had she looked at me and wished she'd kept Daniel instead? Is that why she'd kept him a secret? Built him this nest egg while I struggled? I picked up my phone and almost threw it across the room. Instead, I called my aunt, my mother's younger sister, Karen. If anyone else knew about this, it would be her. "Megan, honey, how are you holding up?" she answered, her voice warm with concern. "Did you know Mom had another child?" The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "Karen?" "Yes," she said finally, her voice small. "I knew." "How long have you known?"
Since she was pregnant. I was 12. I remember her leaving and our mother telling me Pat was helping Aunt Teresa. But I heard them arguing one night. I heard our father call her a disgrace. I was old enough to understand. And you never thought to mention this to me. It wasn't my place, Megan. It was your mother's story to tell. She made me promise, years ago, when you were little, that I'd never say anything. She didn't want you to think less of her. Think less of her. She lied to me my entire life. She protected you, Karen said, and her voice had an edge now. You don't know what it was like back then. 19 years old, pregnant, no husband. Our parents they loved her, but they were ashamed. The shame of it nearly killed her. She gave that baby up because she thought it was the only choice she had. And then she spent the rest of her life trying to make up for it.
By lying to me? By letting me think we were broke when she had hundreds of thousands of dollars? She wasn't lying about being broke, Karen said quietly. That money wasn't hers, not really. It was for him, for Daniel. It was her way of trying to give him something since she'd already given him away. You don't understand what that does to a woman, Megan. The guilt, it never goes away. Did she love him more than me? I hadn't meant to ask it. It slipped out, this raw child's question that I was ashamed of as soon as I said it. Karen's voice softened. Oh, honey, no. She loved you more than her own life. You were everything to her. But Daniel, he was her wound, the thing she couldn't heal. She loved him the way you love a ghost. We talked for another hour. Karen filled in the pieces my mother's letter had left out. How my mother had gone to that home for unwed mothers upstate. How she'd held her baby for 10 minutes before they took him away. How she'd come home and pretended it had never happened. How she'd met my father 2 years later and tried to build a normal life. How she'd never told him about Daniel because she was afraid he wouldn't marry her if he knew. When Daniel found her, Karen said, it was like getting a piece of herself back. But she was terrified of how you'd react. Terrified you'd feel like she'd been hiding this whole other family from you. So she just kept it separate, like she could have both lives without them touching. After we hung up, I went back to the closet and pulled out the shoe boxes of photographs. I went through them differently this time, looking for clues I'd missed. My mother's face in pictures, looking for signs of the secret she'd carried. I found a photo from around the time Daniel would have been born. She's young in it, maybe 18 or 19, standing in front of a lake somewhere. She's not smiling. There's something in her eyes I'd never noticed before. Something lost. I thought about carrying a secret like that for 50 years. Never telling your husband, your daughter, living with the constant fear of discovery. The weight of it must have been crushing. But I was still angry, because whatever her reasons, she'd made choices that affected me. She'd let me believe we were struggling financially when we weren't. She'd built a relationship with a son I'd never heard of while keeping him hidden from me. She'd left me to discover all of this after she was gone, when I couldn't ask her questions or understand her reasoning or forgive her to her face.
I thought the money was the shocking part. The $200,000 she'd squirreled away over 3 decades. I thought that was the secret, the betrayal, the thing I'd have to come to terms with. I had no idea that was just the beginning. 2 days later, I decided to call Daniel. I didn't plan it. I woke up on Friday morning and decided I couldn't wait any longer. Not knowing was worse than knowing. I needed to understand who this person was, this brother I'd never heard of, this ghost who'd haunted my mother's life for 5 decades.
I called the number Thomas had given me from my car, parked in a grocery store parking lot, because I didn't want to be at home, in my mother's house, for this conversation. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? His voice was deeper than I expected. Warm. There was something in it that reminded me of my mother. Is this Daniel Walsh? Yes. Who is this? My name is Megan Walsh. I'm Patricia Walsh's daughter. The silence that followed felt endless. I've been hoping you'd call, he said finally. His voice cracked a little. I'm so sorry about your mother. I wanted to come to the funeral, but I didn't know if I should. I didn't want to make things harder for you. You knew she died? The lawyer called me, Mr. Brennan. He said Pat had left instructions for him to notify me. Pat. He called her Pat. Not mom or mother. Pat. Like a friend. Did you know about the money? I asked. The account? Yes. She told me about it a few years ago. I told her she didn't need to do that, but she insisted. She said she'd missed 30 years of birthdays and Christmases, and she wanted to make up for it somehow. 30 years of birthdays and Christmases. He'd been in her life for 30 years. More than half my life, and I'd never known. I need to meet you, I said. I need to understand what kind of relationship you had with her. I need to know who you are. Of course, he said immediately. Whenever you're ready. I can drive to you or you can come here. Whatever's easier. We agreed to meet for lunch the next day, halfway between our 2 towns. After we hung up, I sat in my car and cried. Not sad crying, not exactly. Confused crying. Overwhelmed crying. The kind of crying you do when your entire life has shifted on its axis and you're trying to find your balance. That night, Richard and I talked for hours. He held my hand across the kitchen table while I tried to articulate the mess of feelings inside me. I feel like I didn't know her, I said. Like the person I buried wasn't the person I thought she was. People are complicated, Richard said. Your mother made choices that seem unfair to you now, but she made them from a place of pain. That doesn't make them right, but it doesn't make her a villain either. But I'm her daughter too. Don't I matter? Of course you matter. You mattered most of all. That's probably why she couldn't tell you. She was afraid of losing you. I wanted to argue with him, but I knew he was right. My mother had spent my entire life afraid I'd find out about Daniel and love her less for it. So she's kept us separate, building 2 different relationships, never letting them touch. It must have been exhausting. The restaurant where we agreed to meet was a small cafe in a town neither of us lived in, neutral territory. I got there 15 minutes early and ordered coffee I was too nervous to drink. When Daniel walked in, I recognized him immediately, even though I'd never seen his face before. He looked like my mother. The same eyes, same nose, same way of holding his shoulders. He was tall, probably 6 feet, with dark hair going gray at the temples. He wore jeans and a sweater and carried himself with a quiet confidence that reminded me of how my mother moved through the world. Steady, unassuming, solid. When he saw me, he smiled, and it was my mother's smile. Megan? Daniel. We shook hands awkwardly, then sat down across from each other. For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. You look like her, he said finally. Pat, you have her chin. You have her eyes. He nodded. People tell me that. I always wondered where I got them from. Before I met her, I mean. We ordered lunch, neither of us ate, and then we talked. Daniel told me his story. He'd been adopted by a couple in their 30s who couldn't have children of their own. They'd been good parents, loving parents. They'd always been open about the adoption, told him from the beginning that his birth mother had loved him but couldn't keep him. When he turned 21, they'd supported his decision to find her. I didn't want to replace them, he said. They're my parents. But I needed to know where I came from. I needed to see her face and understand what I was made of. And when you found her?
She was terrified at first. We met at a coffee shop, and her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her cup. She kept apologizing, saying she understood if I hated her, if I never wanted to see her again. I told her I didn't hate her. I told her I just wanted to know her. And so you did, for 30 years. He nodded. We'd meet once a month, usually for lunch, sometimes more often. We talked on the phone every few weeks. She came to my medical school graduation. She met my wife. She knew my daughters. I felt like I'd been punched. You have children? 2 daughters. They're teenagers now. Pat met them when they were babies. They knew her as their Aunt Pat. My mother had grandchildren I'd never known about. She'd been in their lives, watched them grow up, while keeping them completely separate from me. I never knew, I said, and my voice broke. She never told me about you, about any of this.
Daniel's face fell. I know. I asked her about that. Many times over the years. I told her she should tell you, that you deserved to know. She always said she would, someday. But she was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd hate her. Afraid you'd think she'd replaced you with me. Afraid of complicating your life with this messy history she'd spent so many years trying to bury. He paused, studying my face. You're angry. I don't know what I am. We talked for 3 hours. Daniel told me about his life, his work as a pediatrician, his family. He told me about his relationship with our mother, the conversations they'd had, the quiet, careful way they'd built trust over 30 years. She talked about you all the time, he said. How proud she was of you, how much she loved you. You were the center of her world, Megan. I was something else, someone else. A piece of her past she'd tried to leave behind, but couldn't. Did she tell you about my father?
A little. She said he was a good man, that she'd loved him very much, that losing him had been the hardest thing she'd ever gone through, except for one thing: giving you up. He nodded. I wanted to hate him. It would have been easier if I could have looked at him and felt nothing but resentment, but I couldn't. He was kind, gentle. He spoke about our mother with a tenderness that made my chest ache. And he looked so much like her that talking to him felt like talking to a version of my mother I'd never known. Younger, happier, less burdened by secrets. The money, I said finally. In the account. Right. That. She left instructions that I should share it with you. Half for you, half for me. Daniel shook his head. I don't need it. My wife and I are doing fine. We have good jobs. The girls are taken care of. That money was Pat's guild money. Her way of trying to make up for something that couldn't be made up for. I don't want it. She wanted you to have it.
She wanted to feel like she'd done something for me, but the thing she did for me was meeting with me for 30 years, answering my questions, telling me where I came from. That's what I needed from her. Not money, but the tuition, the $30,000 she gave you. He winced. Yeah, my mom, my adoptive mom, was sick, stage 4 ovarian cancer. The treatments were expensive, and our insurance was maxing out. Pat found out somehow, and she insisted on helping. I told her she didn't have to, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. She said it was the least she could do. Meanwhile, I was paying off my own student loans. I know, she told me. She felt guilty about that too. But in her mind, that money was already spoken for. It was mine before I even found her. She'd been building that account for years, hoping I'd come looking for her someday. When I finally did, she wanted to make sure she had something to give me.
The waiter came by to clear our untouched plates. We ordered more coffee. We didn't drink. I think I understand, I said slowly, why she did what she did. I understand the guilt and the fear and the shame. But Daniel, she lied to me every day of my life. Every single day. She looked me in the eye and kept this enormous secret. And now she's gone, and I can't ask her why. I can't tell her I'm angry or hurt or confused. I can't forgive her to her face. I know, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I think she knew she was being unfair to you. I think that's why she left the letter. She wanted you to understand, even if she couldn't explain it while she was alive. It's not enough. No, probably not. We sat in silence for a while. The cafe was emptying out around us, the lunch rush over, the afternoon stretching ahead. I'd like to meet them, I said finally. Your daughters. My nieces, I guess.
Daniel's face broke into a smile. They'd like that. They've always known they had another aunt out there somewhere. Pat told them about you. Showed them pictures. She showed them pictures of me? Of course. You were her daughter. She was proud of you. I started crying again, right there in the cafe. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand, and we sat there like that. Two middle-aged people who just discovered they were family, holding hands across the remains of an uneaten lunch, while the world moved on around us. I wish I could say that meeting Daniel solved everything, that we hugged and cried and became instant best friends, and I suddenly understood my mother's choices and forgave her completely. But life isn't a movie. Real forgiveness is messier and slower and harder than that. I drove home that afternoon feeling more confused than ever. I liked Daniel. I could see why my mother had wanted to know him, but I was still angry that she'd kept him from me, that she'd built this entire parallel life I'd known nothing about. Over the next week, I threw myself into settling the estate. I met with Thomas Brennan to go over my mother's will. It was straightforward. Everything to me, except for that one bank account, which she'd left instructions to split between Daniel and me. She did love you, you know, Thomas said as I was leaving his office. She talked about you constantly. You were the light of her life. Then why did she lie to me? Because she was human. Because she made a mistake when she was 19 and spent the rest of her life trying to fix it. Because she was terrified of losing you if you knew the truth. People do strange things out of fear, Megan. It doesn't mean they love you less. I wanted to believe him. That night, I went through my mother's house again, looking at it with new eyes. I found more photographs tucked away in drawers. Some of Daniel as a child, school pictures his adoptive parents must have sent her over the years. Some of his wedding. Some of his daughters as babies. She'd kept them hidden away, like treasures she could only take out when she was alone. In her nightstand, I found a journal. I almost didn't open it. Reading someone's private thoughts feels like a violation, but I needed to understand.
I needed to know what she'd been thinking all those years. The entries were sporadic, years between some of them, but there was a thread running through all of them: guilt, shame, fear, love. So much love for both of us, Daniel and me, existing in separate chambers of her heart. One entry from about 15 years ago stopped me cold.
Saw Daniel today. He brought pictures of his daughters. They're beautiful. I'm a grandmother, and I can't tell my own daughter. I can't tell Megan that she has a brother, nieces, a whole other family out there. I'm terrified of what she'll think of me if she knows. Terrified she'll look at me and see what my parents saw: a disgrace, a failure. I've built a good life with Megan, a normal life. If I tell her about Daniel, it all falls apart. So I keep them separate, and I live with the guilt. And I pray that someday she'll forgive me for being too much of a coward to tell her the truth while I'm alive. I sat on her bed and read that entry over and over. My mother had known exactly what she was doing. She'd known she was being unfair, being dishonest. She'd done it anyway, because the alternative, losing me, was worse.
I thought about all the times I'd complained about money when I was younger, about how I'd resented having to work through college, having to watch my friends whose parents could afford to help them, about how I'd thought my mother was just being careful, being practical, when really she was hoarding money for the child she'd given away. But I also thought about everything else she'd given me, every school play she'd attended, every skinned knee she'd bandaged, every late-night conversation we'd had at the kitchen table, the way she'd held me when my marriage had almost fallen apart 5 years ago, the way she'd been there for every important moment of my life, steady and constant and completely devoted. She'd been a good mother to me. Whatever else she'd done, whatever secret she'd kept, she'd loved me fiercely and raised me well. Could I forgive her for the secrets? Could I understand why she'd done what she'd done? I thought so. Maybe.
The hardest part was that I'd never get to tell her that. 3 weeks after I'd found the bank statements, I called Daniel again. "I've been thinking," I said, "about the money." "Okay. I don't want half, and I don't think you should have to take half either." "What do you mean?"
I mean, it's not our money to split. It was hers, and she's gone. And I think we should use it for something she would have wanted. Something that matters.
"What did you have in mind?"
We talked for an hour. By the end of it, we had a plan. My mother had worked in schools her entire life. She'd loved children, loved education. Daniel was a pediatrician. He devoted his life to taking care of kids. Between us, we knew what mattered. We used the money to establish a scholarship fund in my mother's name for students who needed help paying for college, for kids who had talent and drive but whose parents worked as school secretaries and couldn't afford tuition, for anyone who needed a second chance. We set it up through the local community college, the same one I'd gone to before transferring to state school. Every year, the fund would help 3 or 4 students. It wasn't a fortune for any one person, but it would make a difference. It would give someone an opportunity my mother hadn't been able to give me directly, but that she'd worked for decades to create. It felt right. It felt like something she would have wanted. When we signed the papers establishing the fund, Daniel and I took a picture together in front of the college administration building. Later, I framed it and put it on my mantle, next to a picture of my mother. If you look closely, you can see the resemblance. The same eyes, the same smile, the same quiet strength in how we hold ourselves.
A few months after that, I met Daniel's family. His wife, Sarah, was warm and funny. His daughters, Emma and Grace, were smart and curious, and so much like their father. They hugged me when we met, called me Aunt Megan like it was the most natural thing in the world. We had dinner at their house, and Sarah showed me photo albums from over the years, pictures of Daniel's life that my mother had never seen, or had seen only in glimpses. Pictures of holidays and birthdays and ordinary moments that make up a life. And there, tucked throughout the albums, were pictures of my mother at Daniel's medical school graduation, holding Emma as a newborn, sitting in that backyard at a summer barbecue, living this entire other life I'd known nothing about.
She talked about you all the time, Sarah said, about how proud she was of you, how much you'd accomplished. Daniel and I always hoped you'd meet eventually. She wanted to tell you, but she could never find the right time. There probably wasn't a right time, I said. Not for something like this. Later that evening, after dinner, Daniel and I sat on his back porch while the girls did homework inside and Sarah cleaned up the kitchen. "I'm glad she found you," I said. "I'm glad you found her. I'm glad she had this, even if she couldn't tell me about it." "I'm glad too," Daniel said. "And I'm glad you're here now. Better late than never, right? Right." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset over his neighborhood. "You know what the strangest part is?" I said. "I miss her. I miss her more now than I did right after she died. Because now I know there was this whole other side of her I never got to see. This woman who carried 50 years of guilt and shame and love, and somehow managed to keep living and laughing and being my mom through all of it." "She was stronger than she thought she was," Daniel said. "Yeah, she was." It's been almost a year now since I found that envelope in my mother's closet. A year since my world split open and rearranged itself into a new shape I'm still learning to navigate. Daniel and I talk every few weeks. We've started having family dinners once a month, rotating between his house and mine. Emma and Grace call Richard Uncle Richard and argue with me about politics, and come to me for advice about school and boys and life. They're good kids. I'm lucky to know them. Richard and I established a tradition of visiting my mother's grave on the first Sunday of every month. We bring flowers, and I sit there and talk to her. I tell her about the scholarship fund, about Daniel's family, about how strange and complicated and beautiful it is to have this whole other part of my life that she kept hidden from me for so long. I tell her I understand. I tell her I'm still angry sometimes. I tell her I wish she'd trusted me enough to tell me the truth while she was alive. And I tell her I forgive her. Because in the end, what else can you do? She was human. She made mistakes. She carried shame and guilt that weren't really hers to carry, but that her parents and her time and her circumstances had given her anyway. She did the best she could with what she had. She loved 2 children in different ways, and she was terrified of losing either of us. So she kept us apart, and she built separate relationships with each of us, and she carried the weight of that secret until it killed her. The cancer might have taken her body, but I think the secret had been eating at her soul for decades. I found something else in her house a few months ago, another journal from when I was young. There's an entry from right after my father died. She writes about being alone with a 6-year-old daughter and no idea how to move forward, about how she'd already lost one child and couldn't bear to lose another, about how she promised herself she'd be the best mother she could be to me, that she'd never let me feel unwanted or unloved. And she kept that promise. Whatever else she did, whatever secret she kept that promise. The scholarship fund gave out its first awards last month. 3 students, all from families like mine, all working their way through school, all needing help to make their dreams real. We had a small ceremony, and Daniel and I both spoke about our mother, about her dedication to education,
her love for young people, her quiet strength. We didn't mention the secret. We didn't talk about the hidden account or the parallel life or the brother and sister who didn't know each other existed for 50 plus years. Those were our stories to carry now, our inheritance along with the money. One of the scholarship recipients came up to me after the ceremony. She was 18, shy, planning to study engineering. "Thank you," she said. "This makes everything possible. I can't tell you what it means."
I thought about my mother, 19 and pregnant and terrified, giving up her baby because she thought she had no other choice. I thought about her working for 35 years as a school secretary, saving money a little bit at a time, building something for the child she'd lost. I thought about her keeping that secret for 5 decades because she was afraid of losing me too. "You're welcome," I told the girl. "Someone helped me once in ways I didn't know about until recently. I'm glad we can pass it on." That's the thing about secrets I've learned. They cost us. They cost us in ways we can't always measure, in relationships that could have been, in truths that should have been shared, in the energy we spend keeping separate things separate. My mother paid that cost for 50 years, and in some ways I'm paying it now too, grieving for the mother I knew and the one I didn't, trying to reconcile them into a single person. But secrets can also be complicated. They're not always just lies. Sometimes they're the way we survive shame that shouldn't have been ours in the first place. Sometimes they're how we protect the people we love from truths we think they can't handle. Sometimes they're the walls we build to keep our lives from falling apart. My mother's secret cost me something. It cost her even more. But it also gave Daniel a chance to know where he came from. It gave his daughters a grandmother who loved them. It gave me a brother I never knew I needed and a family I didn't know existed. And now, through that scholarship fund, it's giving opportunities to young people who need help reaching for their dreams. Would I rather she'd told me the truth while she was alive? Yes. 1,000 times yes. I would give anything to have had that conversation with her, to have been able to ask her questions and hear her answers, and tell her that I understood, that I forgave her, that I loved her anyway. But she couldn't. The shame and fear that had been planted in her when she was 19 had taken root too deep. So instead, she left me a letter and a bank account and a brother, and she trusted that I'd figure it out after she was gone. And I have, mostly. I'm figuring it out. I keep that letter in my nightstand now, along with the photograph of Daniel and me in front of the college. Sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I read her words again. "I was afraid of losing you," she wrote. "I was afraid of your judgment. I was afraid of upending the life we built together." I understand that fear now. I understand how it can make you do things you know aren't right, how it can make you wall off pieces of yourself to protect what matters most. I don't agree with what she did, but I understand it. And understanding, I've learned, is the first step toward forgiveness. Last week, Emma asked me if I have any kids of my own. Richard and I never did. We tried for years, but it didn't happen. And eventually we made peace with our life as it is. "No," I told her, "but I have a niece now. 2 nieces, and that's pretty great." She hugged me, and I realized that this messy, complicated, unexpected family I've been given is my mother's real gift to me. Not the money, not the secret, but the reminder that families are more than just the people we grow up knowing. They're the people we find along the way, the people we choose to let in, the people who look like us and sound like us and remind us where we came from, even if we didn't know they existed. My mother kept a secret for 30 years, $200,000 she saved, a son she hid, a whole other life she lived in the shadows of the one she shared with me.
It was wrong, and it hurt, and I'm still angry about parts of it.
But it also taught me something important. It taught me that people are complicated, that they carry things we can't see, that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to, that forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing. It's about choosing to love someone despite their imperfections, despite their mistakes, despite the ways they hurt us. My mother was imperfect. She made mistakes. She hurt me in ways I'm still processing. But she loved me. She loved Daniel. She did her best with the impossible situation life handed her. And in the end, she left us both something precious. Not just money, but each other. That's the secret my mother kept for 30 years. Not just the bank account or the brother or the parallel life, but the truth that love is complicated, that family is complicated, that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in pain and confusion and have to be unwrapped slowly, carefully, over time. I'm still unwrapping it. I probably will be for years.
But I'm grateful for it. All of it. Even the parts that hurt. Because that's what it means to be someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's family. It means accepting the whole person, their light and their shadow, their truth and their secrets, their love and their fear. My mother gave me life twice. Once when she raised me, and once when she left me this complicated, messy, beautiful truth to unravel after she was gone. I'm glad I found that envelope. I'm glad I know about Daniel. I'm glad I understand my mother better now than I did when she was alive. And I'm glad that somewhere my mother knew I would be, that she trusted me enough to leave me this gift, even though she couldn't give it to me herself. That's love too, the kind that lives beyond death, the kind that trusts us to understand eventually, even when understanding seems impossible.
My mother is gone, but her love remains in the brother I found, in the family I've gained, in the students we'll help through the years, in the forgiveness I choose every day. That's the real inheritance, not the money, not the secret, but the choice to love anyway, to forgive anyway, to move forward anyway, and to trust that she knew what she was asking of me when she left me that letter. She knew I could handle it. She knew I'd find my way through the anger and the pain to something like understanding. She knew me better than I knew myself. And in the end, that's what mothers do. Even imperfect ones. Even ones who keep secrets. Even ones who are gone. They know us. They love us. They trust us to carry on. And so I do.